everybody, and welcome to the Brace Yourself podcast. My name is Ben Beaumont, and my co-host is Simon Boys. This week, we are covering an huge, globally relevant topic, looking at the governance of scaffolding internationally and global standards generally, and the roles of our trade bodies and member associations in delivering that for us. In order to do that, we have got two fantastic guests today. It's going to be absolutely great. And at the end, we've got all our usual features to look forward to. So let's meet our guests then. This week, we're doing something a little bit different. So we've got two guests, both at the top of their international and national trade bodies, now sitting on the board of the International Access and Scaffolding Association, which I am confidently told is named IARSA. Although if I get that wrong, I apologise. Joining us from the UK today, we've got Clive Dickin, the CEO of NASC, which is actually NASC. I had to do that, Clive, because it's the brand police, to be honest. And Absolutely. All the way from Queensland in Australia, Rob Thiess, who is the Managing Director of Construct and the Chair of the Scaffolding Association of Australia. Gentlemen, it is absolutely great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be
Great.
here.
So before we get going, I just wanted to take a moment really and say one thing, because we're talking about IARSA today, and one of the people that founded IARSA was a prominent figure in the scaffolding industry called Wayne Connolly. His work at the NASC and getting IARSA off the ground was a great contribution, and the conversation we are going to have today sits on the foundation that he built. So, Clive, would you like to just say a word? You work closely with Wayne. Would you like to say a couple of words before we move on?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. You know, look, what a profound loss. A lovely gentleman, very kind-hearted, but also an absolute stalwart and supporter of just scaffolding, seeing scaffolding and wanting to see scaffolding get better and more prominent. And IARSA was one of the key areas he saw as it moving forward. And, you know, we've just got to honour him now in carrying that message forward. So, absolutely. Pleasure to be here talking about, obviously, something that was passionate to his heart.
Perfect.
Thanks, Clive. And I'll second that too. I think that was a great tribute, mate. So well done there. And our other guest today is Rob. Rob, you're a bit of a pioneer of the Scaffolding Association in Australia. Been there for many, many years and recently appointed a life member. So congratulations on that. But for anybody who's been living under a rock and doesn't know who Rob Thiess is, mate, what's your background story?
30 plus years in the temporary workspace. I've worked for one of the major suppliers. I've worked for my own scaffold company, running that for a little while. Consulting business, specialising in temporary works for the last 25, 30 years. And kicked off with the Scaffold Association Queensland back in the early 90s. Member of that for quite a number of years, the chair of that. And then 3 years ago, we kicked off the SAA, national body, because we were getting that many inquiries from other states that we thought we'd expand the Queensland operation nationally.
Awesome. So, Clive, same quick question back to you. You're now the CEO of the oldest scaffolding trade body in the world. How does your background kind of shape how you approach the job at NASC?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, first of all, the most glaring thing is I'm not a scaffolder. I'm new to temporary works, and when we talk about the images at the end, you know, that's going to be part of what I say. But the reality is, for 35, almost 40 years, I've been working in trade associations, working in making sure the recognition and needs of members are realised, and we affect and improve the environment that they're working within. And topics today, Ben, you know, are all emulating from that, but also from a training and education, Scissors, which is owned by NASC, absolutely. 30 years ago, I was working in the plumbing sector, working on the plumbing vocational qualifications, aviation, piloting, medical, all of those require constant training and education. So I'm bringing all that wealth of different sector knowledge and trade body governance into what I hope is making NASC and Scissors a better place. And I think we're going to be touching on a bit of that today.
This episode is powered by Leach's, the one-stop marketplace for the scaffolding and construction industry, with over 30,000 product lines in their online store. They've got everything you need to deliver your project to industry-leading standards. And as a customer for the last 20 years, I know they get you what you need when you need it. If you head over to their online store at leachers.com, be sure to use the discount code Brace Yourself for an exclusive 15% discount as a thank you for being a subscriber to this show. Nice. That's brilliant. Well, before we get into it, let's just set up the conversation. We're structuring the show today around 3 of EASA's 5 stated priorities. And they are standardizing training, improving the image of scaffolding, and strengthening compliance. So those are the 3 pillars of the topic that we're going to talk about today. And we want to kind of get past the press release version into actually what they mean, both to the trade bodies that are trying to deliver them and to everybody else in the industry, you know, and how are our industry's interests being handled and pushed forward and promoted by the people we entrust to do it. So I think that's a great place to start, if we may, gentlemen. Let's get into it. So we're going to, first part of this conversation is about standardizing training. So Rob, if I may, I'll start with you. For our international listeners and people that don't really know the Australian system, like me, I guess that's why I'm asking this question. What does it look like? What do you need to go and work on a scaffold in Australia? And how does that compare to kind of systems you might have encountered around the world?
Okay, so we all require training. So we have a basic, intermediate and advanced scaffolding tickets. We're not a trade. We're not recognised as a trade. So the level of training basically reflects that. There is potential that someone can go and get a basic, intermediate and advanced scaffold ticket in the space of a week. Pay your money to certain providers, go along to the training for the 5 days and get your ticket at the end of the day. Failure rates are almost non-existent. So if you go there, you're pretty much assured of passing. Standard of trainees we get out, the industry is not very happy with them, but the training setup is so ingrained at the moment that it's a huge moving beast that's going to take a while to change. So it's the bar's set fairly low in my opinion. It could be set a lot higher than what it currently is, and we're trying to work out how we can get around that and work towards that.
Rob, you mentioned the basic, the intermediate, and the advanced tickets. Just for context, what's the difference between a basic, intermediate, and advanced in terms of what the scaffolder can and can't do? Just to give the listeners some context around, you know, going from nothing to an advanced license in a short period of time. Yeah. What can and can't do?
Yeah, mainly the basic one. So in Australia, the majority of our scaffold is system scaffold. Has been old wedge lock for many years, but the ring lock and cup lock are a little bit more prominent now, especially the ring lock. So that's getting more and more. So our major training is around those system scaffolds. We do have some tube and fit stuff going on for different industries, but it's certainly a minority when you compare it to the overall scaffold industry. So a basic scaffolder can erect basic scaffolds, meaning system manufacturer's recommendations or guidelines, nothing too complicated. Once you start getting into mast climbers, hoists, cantilevers, things like that, you're moving up into the intermediate scaffolders ticket, and then you've got rigging, swing stages, drop scaffolds, things like that are in the advanced ticket. So majority, if you're doing residential, you can probably get away with a basic ticket for most of the time. If you're on the tier 1 sites, you know, the bigger construction sites, you really should be looking at least an advanced ticket.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned earlier that the Scaffolding Association of Queensland's been around for 23 years, I think it was, you said, and now
early 90s it kicked off. Yep.
And now merged into the Australian Association as a whole, like you said, capture all of the country. So how do you, with other industries such as NASC and NASC, whichever way we want to call it, in the UK and a couple of other bodies around the world. Honest opinion, where does this Association of Australia sit in comparison to some of the other associations around the world, and what can we learn from those around the place?
How do you mean size-wise, or just what we're actually currently doing? Or?
In terms of adoption, in terms of what does it mean to the members to be a member of the association, and what benefits do they get, and what can we learn from some of the other regions?
Okay, so when we were the Queensland Association, we were very much involved with the Queensland Workplace Health and Safety Act and participating in writing their codes of practice and things like that, but it was basically state-based. Trying to get influence with Australia, we've got 7 different states, states and territories to deal with. So we've got different levels of government. People like countries like New Zealand, where you've got the one level of government to deal with. It's a little bit easier. I think it's similar to the UK. In Australia, we've actually got the different states will have different regulations. We're all supposed to be working under the same harmonised regulation, but they're not overly harmonised in a lot of cases. So trying to thread that work in amongst those different regulations sometimes gets a little bit difficult. So from a member point of view, trying to get enough. When we were Queensland based, we had about 50 odd members. We currently stand at about 193, I think, from last count, moving to national. The idea is to get that knowledge out on as wide as we can to as many people as we can on what scaffolding actually is, what we need to do, regulations around scaffolding, training, etc. We are a safety-based industry. We're providing safety to everybody else in the industry. Nothing can get built without scaffolding. And we're providing a safe access for everybody else. So we're really pushing that idea that we should be better trained than what we're doing. We're providing a service, not an afterthought, which I think happens a lot of the time. And that's a constant battle I think the whole industry, I think, has everywhere, that we're an unnecessary evil. Nothing's left behind when we leave a job, as opposed to a concreter or a plaster or someone else. So it's very hard to get that recognition and that appreciation of what we actually do. Part of the association is to try and grab those bodies together to do that.
You make a great point about some of those challenges. Is like, we're all one country, but then we've got different states inside that country that have different rules and different regulations. And then for scaffolders moving between companies and states, or even some companies that have multiple presences in different states need to abide by different rules. Can you just touch on the best practice guidelines that the Scaffold Association's been working on and what that's going to mean for the industry?
Yes, so we've been starting to get to enable us to actually get better training, starting to push out more technical documents and assistance to the members. We needed a base to start from. So we've gone with a best practice guidelines, what we consider is good practice and what we should be trying to adhere to. It's taking the best bits of different states, adding that information together in the one document, gives us something to work from, which our technical committees are then going to be able to start producing some technical guidance document based on that original document. Now, it's not a perfect document. We've got to put it out at some point in time, so there's going to be some issues and some holes left in it that we're going to fill eventually, but we've got to get something out there to start with. If we don't, then we'll be still working on our draft in 10 years' time, waiting for it to be perfect, and that's not going to help anybody.
Nice,
so
thanks, Rob.
The idea is to try and get it out, and we'll get some flack and feedback from it, no doubt. But hopefully it'll actually help a lot of people as well to start with, trying to get some stuff together. But as I say, it's really a base for our technical committees to start working on, rather than just being a static document that sits there and nothing happens to it.
Yeah. Cool. I just want to move the conversation to Clive here, because you touched on training earlier, and obviously Scissors in the UK, Clive, which is the training scheme run by NASC, and itself is really well respected and well established. And in the training context, a bit picking up from what Rob was saying earlier, in the training context, some of the feedback from the members is that in some locations you get an absolutely brilliant training course. And obviously we know all the variables that go into delivering one. And some of the content you get not so brilliant training course. Just leave it there. Some are excellent, some are tick box.
Yeah.
That's not. It's not just saying it. That obviously came out of the NASC's own 2024
Research.
training survey, right? So since that training report landed, what have you guys been doing to kind of level that out
Mhm.
and raise the bar in line with your own
No,
report?
great question, Ben. I mean, the biggest challenge with any scheme is consistency and quality. And there was in 24 far bigger questions than just consistency and quality. We went out and we did that very large perception survey, which we announced the results at ScaffX1, as we call it, ScaffX24. And we looked to CSAT scoring. Everybody's familiar with CSAT scoring. You know, the reality is those lovely little stars in Amazon. Is it a good product? Is it an average product? And frankly, in parts, we got some good scores, Ben, and we got some average scores. And one was consistency of quality. One was delivery network, capacity within the delivery network. If you were in West London, if you're in Wessex, you've got hours to travel. I mean, I frequently say, and use an example from Worcestershire, which is not far from me. I know this is a bit of a global show. How can it take an hour for a learner of 16, 17, 18 to get to a centre? That's just not an effective way today to look at it. So there were many things that the actual research pointed to. It also became very clear in the very end of 24 and early 25 that the bedrock of the basis, you'll remember the CAP books. Does everybody remember those? Yep, there was 13 versions of the CAP book over 13 different course segments. So any change was empirically harder to bring in, or any quality assurance was just more difficult because you had so many variables to try and measure. So there was an overall root and branch review of the fundamental course content structure. And we've now got a single training manual. We brought in a single contract for the centres to follow. Why? Because any enforcement action that was required, which is ultimately worst case, and I must stress worst case, we're not working on that, to bring in improvement, you've got to have a process to actually get to that. All had to be re-engineered. And we did all of that through pretty well 2025. And I'm sure you saw the press coverage. We're working hard with the centres that are extremely important to the delivery of scissors. But the reality is we had to get that foundation right now. We've got new courses, we've got new content, digitization, ScaffPlan, which we've soft launched. The big launch is happening in June. It's coming, folks. Digitization for the LMS, re-improvements around CPDs, just been going through our quality assurance processes. The sector representative organisation, don't want to bore all of your listeners. That's one of the governance things that we've got to background has got to all be put in place. And we've put all of that to bring those qualities through. It's not simple education, you know, and just touching on Rob, you know, the different levels. And Rob said it will take years to change. I would love to click a set of fingers, and there's an expectation that, you know, by some it's dead easy. You can just change it overnight and it's fine. It isn't. The educational systems, the wheels within that take months and years, and we're really committed to, you know, a degree in apprenticeship in scaffolding.
Clive, on that point, sorry to interrupt. On that very point, because you literally perfectly set me up for a question I wanted to ask you, which is, so if someone's done a course now, and you've put all this hard work in, but they've done a course and had let's just say an average or a disappointing experience. What's the mechanism that's happening at the moment for that to improve, and that they can have some confidence that something's going to change, and the feedback's going to get heard, and actually going to result in something positive, you know?
First bit of advice, Ben, if you're the trainer or you're the employer, if you're the trainer, go back to the centre and share your feedback. The centres don't want bad experiences. The centre doesn't want a bad output. So your first immediate recourse is please raise it with the centre and look at it. We're actually making sure that the course programme is standardised, is consistent and everything else. And there is auditing processes that are in place. If in the event they're not getting satisfaction, come back to scissors. And there's an important point, because a lot of people think, oh, scissors, we own the centres, we run the centres. We don't. Scissors is the standardised setting and accreditation body that sets out the scheme, and is a very separate entity to the centres. In the event you've got dissatisfaction with the centre, please come back to scissors. And we have now got a fully actually operational complaints process, and we've had complaints starting to come through, and we're tackling those, and we feed back in a helpful way at first to the centres as a learning opportunity to improve customer service, or is it course content? And we're working with that process. We've also radically transformed now also our auditing processes, which were very much binary in that there was a standard approach. And this goes back to that contractual and training manual change. We now have randomized audits. We have inspections. We have the ability to start dropping in and helping centres. Yeah. And you'll note also in the training manual that we've changed the training centre spec, bringing in CCTV and a number of test and control models that allows us to have a far more engaging process to quality. So those are a few things that we've done. Yeah. We are very committed to seeing the CSAT scoring improve from the 3.9 that we were seeing in for contractors to something like more like 4.9. And that's the metric that we will be measuring in around about a year's time. We'll be going back out and doing that whole questionnaire to see how we're doing on that process.
Cool. Nice. And Clive, while we're on the international piece, I see that the NASC has now signed its first cross-border licensing deal with Scissors in Malaysia. So from the outside looking in, what can we expect to see here? Is this the start of Scissors being rolled out internationally, and is that the plan long term? And what's that going to mean?
Here's a shocker for you, Simon. It's been international since 2013. So this isn't new. Scissors has been operating and has some amazing international centres from China to Kathmandu to Abu Dhabi, even in the Caribbean, and beautiful, wonderful places, and it's growing very rapidly. This new CES system is a different model of operation. The 2013 model was based around a centre singularly being run by an organisation in a particular jurisdiction running the overseas scheme. Within Malaysia, we've actually partnered with MOSA, and that came out, the Malaysian Occupational Scaffold Association came about because the Malaysian government recognised TG20 and also Scissors as the standard that they wanted to adopt. Brilliant. They didn't actually ask NASC or Scissors, by the way, I might add, which is fantastic. But we're helping now MOSA to roll out the auditing systems and the quality control and all of the things and the package of the OSDS program overseas. And that means qualifying all of their trainers, getting them up to speed, looking at the centres, giving the ability for MOSA to audit the centres. We will oversee that and ensure that there's quality control. So we're going to be the supreme auditing function, if that's the best term to use. But yeah, it's a new model, Simon. And if other countries want to follow that, we'll be happy to help. If it's about helping write content in different ways, we will help in that space. And we did with New Zealand many years ago. The actual apprenticeship program that you see in New Zealand was based on the Scissors program. We've gone further in different ways, and they've gone in different directions to suit their market. And that's really the important aspect. It's about making it very much around the region. And if you look at system scaffolding at the moment, the Scissors program is more tube and fit. So we are seeing a globalization more through the type of the scaffolding rather than the scheme. I think that's the big thing that will be the future. We'll start seeing the different forms of scaffolding actually becoming more embedded into Scissors at a more binary level.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, with this new model that NASC owns the IP and the documentation and everything and then licenses it off to Malaysia, and then so Malaysia will then pay a fee back to the NASC to manage that. And how does all that work?
Simon, yeah, I mean, let's just deal with something there. You talk about a fee. Yeah, there's a fee. We've got to cover our costs in getting our auditing and people out there. But this isn't a commercial. NASC is not for profit. Scissors is not for profit. Scissors' turnover is less than £1 million. Let's be really clear here. When you start looking at the training centres within the UK market, their turnover's exponentially larger. And comes back to that degree of separation and understanding that Scissors' centres are centres in their own right. Scissors is a standard assessing body. But that standard assessing body is a not-for-profit entity. We're here to try and improve the qualities. Let's get back to the basics, making sure the life expectancy of a scaffolder is fundamentally improved in this high-risk industry. That is what the carding is about, and reducing risk to the contractor who's ultimately employing those individuals and has the legal responsibility for their protection. That's the backdrop of it, and we're here to help with that. Is there a commercial? Yeah, it is, but it's at a cost base, and we're talking a few £1,000s. People, I think, would be shocked if they understood actually the commercial realities of what is actually being done there and why we're doing it.
I think that's a good thing, though, ultimately, because it's if it was anything other than that, it would be there'd be questions being asked, wouldn't there? And ultimately, that's important. So last one on training then. So if EASA, I've got pronunciation is still tiptoeing around it. Trying to standardize training globally. We're trying to get some kind of standardization. One of the outcomes could be that you get a genuinely portable qualification. And that's presented as being a positive thing, right? And in many ways it is. But it also creates kind of a scenario whereby you've got a pool of scaffolders that are all at a recognized level that can move anywhere and be hired anywhere by anyone. And in that scenario, you've got countries potentially where paying the most money will get the resource and everyone else might not get that resource. And we've seen a version of that happening in Australia, I believe. I mean, Simon's told me about it, where people from New Zealand are coming over to Australia because they pay more money. And you've got broadly similar systems, and it's happening there. But if we magnify that on a global level, that's going to become a bigger, sharper problem, not a softer one. So to you, Clive, I guess, if EASA standardization, I'm going to ask a similar question to you in a second, Rob, because I'm interested to hear what you've got to say from the front line. If it makes that qualification portable, how does it avoid becoming a mechanism just to move talent into countries that pay the most money and leave other countries devoid of that talent?
Sure. Look, Ben, great question. I think it's a two-part answer, because you're blending EASA's responsibilities and role with also the need for each region and jurisdiction to have a standard and training. EASA's looking to standardize it and we're very early stages, aren't we, Rob? We've not actually agreed formally yet what that looks like. And I have written a positioning paper, which is still in discussion with inside EASA, about it actually looking at the difference in variation that Rob alluded to, the different levels they've got with inside Australia and the variance that has in comparison to the scissors scheme within the UK. And you're talking 3 years training for a part 2 in comparison to weeks potentially. And forgive me if I got that wrong, Rob, in Australia. We need to standardise it in that we look at a level 2 national occupational standard or international occupational standard. And if you look at Scissors' program, it's a level 2. If you look at the advanced, it's a level 3. And there are international standards. And that's where I think EASA sits in that, trying to standardise so that actually the recognition of the training leads to recognition of scaffolding as an actual qualified trade. That's, I think, the big message. That's the goal we're trying to get to. In regards to the question of mobility of workforce, we're already facing it, as you said, Ben, and you alluded to the Australian situation. But hold on, I speak quite frequently to scaffolders in the UK who are at pains to tell me how wonderful and warm it was in the Middle East and how wealthy they were when they went to the Middle East and went to Malaysia or went to America. We are, you are right. We are on the cusp of making that bigger. But actually, here's the irony of it. If you start standardizing training or getting some consistency of the qualification and the structure, actually the indigenous workforce not only becomes safer, they actually also start to increase the salary expectations and money that's actually being generated there. And rather than actually profoundly creating migratory patterns, you actually start to level the platform. Are you going to see people moving?
Actually going to happen though, Clive? Really?
Ben, it's a global market. Who'd have said China and Amazon would have been the main production processes in the 1900s in the United Kingdom, when manufacturing was predominant in the Birmingham, in the West Midlands, in the Black Country. Globalization takes time. I take your point completely.
The point being is the salaries are relevant, though. I mean, you might get an increase nominally here, but if you're getting paid $10 and suddenly you get paid $20, but over here you get paid £180 a day and it's $20 a day, they're still going to move, even though it's relative, right? You see it in the Middle East all the time.
Well, here's a profound example for you. I did a fact-finding trip to the UAE last year. I was particularly interested because of the review of the OSTS program we're seeing. The OSTS, the overseas program for scissors, is now larger than the UK carded population. Okay. It's profound. We are training more people now overseas than we are inside the United Kingdom. Why? Because it's just growing, and the globe is a bigger place than the UK. But what was profound is NMDC. I'm going to pick on NMDC's side. Yard 13 in Abu Dhabi employed 2,500 scaffolders on site. That's massive. You know, if you look at the UK's largest employer, that's virtually their entire employed workforce of scaffolders actually being on one site. When you then look at that, actually most were unqualified and no training whatsoever, but also were mainly from other countries such as Manila and Malaysia, Pakistan and other countries, and were coming in and being paid exceptionally low salaries. By training them, you actually aren't looking at changing our workforce and pulling from other countries of skills. It's actually about upskilling the population that's moving from another country. And it's, you know, that we've got to look at here is actually professionalizing scaffolding at a global level. And yes, we're still going to get, hold on, I can earn 150,000, 200,000 by moving and the salaries that are there. But I actually see that probably becoming less and less. And actually the structure of getting recognition for training, which will take decades, Ben, let's be really, really clear. This is not a flick of the fingers and overnight we're going to solve it. So you're still going to see migratory patterns happening. But the reality is, if we can start raising it, the sunny uplands, the opportunity here is for scaffolding, access, temporary works to actually get a recognition that it deserves.
Yep. And Rob, what's your thoughts? You see it every day with Australia and New Zealand.
I don't think it's happening. It's happening. We get the bulk of our commercial scaffolding force. I would say you could probably at least 50 to 70% of those are from New Zealand. So we're sucking those guys across and using them in our workforce. I think as a result, because of what you have left, those guys are then actually getting better paid than what they probably would have been before, because that void has to be filled by somebody to do that work. That is increasing. And we're actually seeing that in Australia, where we've got definitely have three tiers almost of scaffolders, where we've had the residential market, often being paid per jack to put up a scaffold, moving into the smaller commercial and larger commercial side of things, where you're getting union enterprise bargaining agreements with certain rates, and you've got an award rate that's less than that. And then you've got the mining industry, which sucks a lot of the talent out, and pays big dollars for mining petrochemical industry. Those guys do cycle back into the commercial side of things occasionally when the work dropped off in the that mining industrial sector. They then, as soon as it picks up again, they're back out the door again. So there is that drain of marketplace going from commercial to mining. And as a result, that commercial sector then has to start paying more money to keep those guys on the books working on the commercial side of things, because that still has to happen. Yep. So I think it's not only happening locally, that's also probably pretty indicative probably what's happening worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to Clive's point too, it is something that's going to take a long period of time. It's not something we're going to see a change overnight. And I know talking to a lot of the company owners in New Zealand, they're really struggling to find scaffolders at the moment because they all leave, like we said, and go to Australia. But I think it's a step in the right direction, and we'll see how this plays out over the coming years. It's good to know there's a strategy in place to try to overcome it and standardise it. So kind of segues.
And getting to that level two, and getting it to an international level 2 training level, that gives us then more impetus and able to go to government and say, well, the rest of the world's running at this level 2. Our guys are down to level 1. We want to elevate them up to level 2 so it's compatible with the rest of the world. Gives us more opportunities to try and push that, creating a trade out of the industry rather than just as it is at the moment.
Yeah. Nice. Which segues us nicely into the next section, which is the next pillar of the mission, is about improving the image of scaffolding. Right, really hard thing to measure.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say, hard to measure. I think. Yeah, lots of different people will look at this different ways and have different variations or different determinations of success. But as a international body, what success look like in this pillar?
Who's that to, Simon?
Yeah.
To Clive. Sorry, Clive.
Oh, Clive.
Yeah, sorry.
Clive.
Look, I mean, I've had the luck, and I never, when I joined NASC, thought it would be as global, my activities, as it is today. And I've had the luck to see at a global level the variance in the quality of scaffolding and the image of scaffolding across the whole globe. But as Rob said right at the outset, what has been profound for me as a non-scaffolder coming in, and we'll touch on it with the images at the end, is that Harry Potter stage, Faslane nuclear, Penn for the submarines, aviation, utilities, all of these industries, not just construction, are beholden. They're not actually just selecting scaffolding because they, it's an option. They're beholden. They need the fundamental industry to survive and grow. And Rob made an extremely powerful point about we're not seen at a global level with the client as an actual necessity and part of the process. Construction in the UK, we've estimated scaffolding's around about 6% of the overall project value of the actual end product. But it doesn't exist at the end. Temporary works, it's taken away. There's nothing there. And so what does it mean at a global level? And that's where one of the initiatives is to have a global day, International Scaffolding and Access Day, which isn't in the middle of the winter for certain parts of the globe. And there's been a bit of, why did we move it in the UK from the January? Well, because actually it's the middle of the winter and we can't do as many things as we would like to do. And equally in the other parts of the globe, it's the festive season and holiday season, and it's not the time to be holding. So we've got to move it. But if we're going to raise the bar, one of the initiatives we've done is write to our Prime Minister in the UK. And the EASA is encouraging that recognition. Why? Because it has such a profound impact, and if we start talking about success, it's about seeing new entrants, young people leaving school and going, actually, I do want to get into what is an engineering industry, what is a fantastic sector. And so there's several metrics which each of the trade bodies will be looking at as to how we measure success. NASC has got some very clear goals around public awareness, impact, and number of recruits coming in, etc. So
Clive,
that's the message.
Give us some examples, Clive. In 5 years' time, what will some of those metrics, what are they now, and what will they be in 5 years if you've been successful?
Yeah, so if you look at our public affairs activity at the moment, Ben, where we had zero engagement with Palace of Westminster. Seriously, I was gobsmacked. I wrote into Westminster just over 2.5 years ago when I joined NASC, said, hi, look, we want to talk to you about some of the challenges with boot camps. And we got stonewalled, Ben. And I mean, we got literally zero response. We were, who are you? Was the reaction. I'm pleased to say now we're actually having government departmental discussions about some of the structural changes we've got to make around the legislation within the UK. That is a material improvement in the recognition of the sector. Now, what does that mean? Well, hold on. It's actually about talking about 16-year-olds leaving school. And when they go to construction college or go to college, they're not just offered brickwork, joinery, electrotechnical, plumbing. That actually through the DFE, we can start saying, there's this thing called scaffolding. And that's the golden advantage of trying to get it. The other bigger metric is also starting to see growth in recognition of the standards. And again, we've got that coming as well, Ben. So there's lots of metrics, lots of tests that we're doing that we're actually measuring. Is the one golden one? No. And are we talking again about a flick of the fingers and it's done? No. This is a decades-long project. This is going to take months and years to actually change.
You know I'm talking to you. What are you doing right now? Get your ass over to scaffplan.com, check out all the features, watch a demo, download a free trial today and see how ScaffPlan will absolutely transform your operations. Get there now.
I want to ask something specifically about like the NASC and the membership standards, because the image of scaffolding is got to improve only if the people in the scaffold industry improve their own self-image and what they believe in themselves, right? And that's a conversation that many NASC members have about meeting the standard, and some of them who are very good are very proud of the standards they do, and some of them are very critical of other members who don't meet those standards, right? And I
Absolutely.
know there's places like, and I was talking to a mutual friend of ours who likened it the other day to a car MOT. He said anyone can make the car pass on for one day of the year, but what they're doing for the rest of it. And I think those low standards, when doing the right thing when no one's looking and holding yourself accountable, all that kind of stuff, right, is super important.
Absolutely.
So, but one of the things that I guess. How do I phrase this question correctly? So a member can be good on the day of the audit, right?
Yeah.
But for the rest of the time, it's not very good.
Yeah.
And that affects everybody.
100%.
What I guess the question I want to ask is, what are you guys doing to deal with the rest of the time?
Okay, good question. And believe it or not, Ben, not being immune to this, absolutely. I'm 2.5 years into the organisation. You've seen NASC change in many ways. One of the more subtle things we've been doing is just over a year ago, we started doing a review in 2 key areas. First of all, making the audit far more transparent and easily understood. Why? Because if you're trying to get it so that it isn't a flash in the pan where they bring support in, to get them through an audit, which is what quite often businesses do, not just within NASC's audit, they're getting specialists in to help. So we have to help making it more understandable. And we've been working tirelessly. So a bit like your driving test, you have majors, minors, non-conform. We've standardized it into a very simple RAG rating so that if you're not achieving a certain area, you can easily take corrective action and understand. We've got to help members understand that far more easily. Why? Because if it's too hard to understand, it's not going to make it day to day. So we've made that fundamental change. The second aspect is what we call, and we're slightly more politically correct, maybe, Ben, we call it the magnolia effect. And when we turn up and you can smell the magnolia paint, you can see the white lines have been placed down. That's all indicative of the knee jerk of an audit's coming. We've got to get ready for that audit. That is not good management. So we have to reward a change in behavior from that knee jerk reaction to an audit to a continual state of readiness. So we're moving to a risk-based audit approach. And we've already started announcing that. That's being rolled out as we speak. That's where we reward through information, tactical information about the risk that we're seeing from the actual complaints we receive, from things that we're seeing out on the site, activities, number of carded staff and ratios, a whole range of metrics, which I won't go into today, but that then forms a risk register. And we reward then.
So that for an individual contractor, an individual member. So
absolutely, for every individual member. And we move to a 3-year audit process for those that are hitting good point scoring in there to reward those that are managing well. And Ben, you've heard those organisations, you know who they are. Those that are a little bit more, say, focused on that time moment, we encourage then. We educate and we support, but it will be maybe 2 years, 1 year, or even 6 monthly audits and continuous improvement to actually support them and do that. We've started that process already, and that's something I'm quite proud of because it tackles that
let me ask a question.
Ineffectual approach.
Let me ask a question about that very point. So the reality of having a risk-based audit system and all those things you said means you need to have people out on the road looking and assessing people when no one's watching. So I assume, therefore, that you've got people coming around. I think I know the answer to that already. But you've got people coming on the road. But then, so that's the first question. Have you? And what will they be doing? Are they going to be going around going, oh, look at them doing this work, blah, blah, blah. And at what power are they going to have? Is it just a visual look, see, report back? And then if they get this score, is that going to be then public knowledge? Is it going to be like a leaderboard of here's my NASC
let's do with the leaderboard. No.
And I can see who's good and who's not.
No, Ben, we're not going into a leaderboards. Contractors can have a bad day. Ben, the best of the world can have a bad day. Even I, as brilliant as I am.
I know that. Everyone has the one-off, Clive, but if you were talking about having a long-term impact, what single one event is going to pull someone from the top to the bottom. You've got to build that.
Absolutely.
You're assessing behavior and habit of a long-term. So, but that's not about everyone having a bad day. That's about saying if these guys are consistently really good,
yes,
then there you go. And these guys are consistently not really good. Now, there's got, whether that's an internal thing or an external thing, what's the point in having a risk rating
there's
if
two
no one's going to be able to
aspects.
see it?
Yeah, there's two aspects, Ben, you've got to think about. First of all, you're straying into defamation potentially. And that's the challenge. You are always going to then potentially say, well, I don't agree with you. And you're creating also complexity for a client to understand it. And so when we looked at that model, and we've had several organizations and organizations within membership and externally say, oh, we should have an entry-level membership. Well, they're still holding a badge. They're still holding that badge. Well, actually, no, it's black and white. You either pass or you fail. And we've got grey within that scale, but that's for internally NASC to manage, but to ensure there's a clarity that the badge has that fundamental value. And you're absolutely right. 2-year audit is too long. We've got to bring that frequency up for those that are not achieving that harmonious quality, and we've got to reduce it for those that are. And that's the reward. The delta of the cycle and the process, there's going to be peaks and troughs. And one of the metrics we do look at is change of ownership, change of management. Why? Because the change of management will be indicative to the management ethos and values that are then deployed within the organization. And we look at all of those variables as to the risks. To your earlier question, yes, any sharp-eyed viewers out there will have seen we've been recruiting. One of my failings in last year's ops plan was we didn't get enough staff into the organisation because we've got to recruit. And I'm not sure if people have heard me say this before, but just for the camera, NASC works actually more of as a media company. We're a media and production and certification company, not actually a scaffolding company. So I'm looking for people that can work in the accreditation and audit and approval process that are scaffolding experts.
Yeah.
They're hard people to find. And last year, we've been looking tirelessly for those individuals. I'm pleased to say we've got some new compliance officers that are now employed. We've got some great compliance officers that are contractors, and I'm absolutely building on that. And the same with scissors. As we get more centres, we've got to have more auditors. More auditing is absolutely what we're doing. We're also looking at mystery customer. And you're absolutely right, Ben. There are going to be boots on the ground. We are going to have to use some binoculars. And there are, as we all know, symptoms that are easily identifiable, both from projects that are underway being built or taken down, or that are actually live. And you can look for fundamental faults that we can train into third parties that are not scaffolders. They don't have to be. Look for these symptoms, please. Look for these, and please go round. And yeah, is there a likelihood of some sites saying, oh, well, we won't put our name on it? Well, actually, we will find out. Don't you worry. We will find out who the client is.
I'm going to interject and maybe say one thing. Most scaffold companies do you the favour of doing it themselves. They'll post pictures of the scaffold online, and they don't know whether it's good or bad. So you can just follow the social media accounts, and you'll find half the problems anyway.
Oh, and Ben, there'll be an announcement in the next few days. I won't. Well, actually, I'll say now we have just brought in a social media policy, and we are already measuring through complaints. We get through social media. So yes, we're doing that, and that feeds into the risk model. So please, carry on doing it. What we've got to see, coming back to the image point, is people taking control of their social media. Now, the challenge you've got is staff. Let's be really clear.
I'm going to stop you because I want to hear what Rob's input is on this, because we could talk about that point all day, and it's a really interesting point. I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say on it. But Simon, we wanted to ask Rob about this because it's a different situation in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got very different challenges, and it's, some of the challenges that you guys are having over in the UK, Clive, would be great problems for us to have in Australia. It's much more mature membership base. There's an application process, there's an audit process. Whereas in Australia, if, you put in you pay your invoice, you're a member. We've already talked about the training challenges and some of the other issues that we've got around the place. And, we've definitely got a long way to go. And there's lots of people, working really hard behind the scenes. Rob's got a great team there working to put things in the right direction. But Rob, question is, where do we start? We've heard all of the challenges that they've got at NASC, and where do we start, and what's the first steps?
Well, we actually looked at having an audit process for our membership to start with. And the main issue with it is, as Clive's indicated, is the bodies to actually and the cost to actually create the audit process. No point in having a set of metrics that you've got to comply with if you've got no one checking on it and doing the auditing process. We're just not big enough for that at this point in time. So our thoughts were, let's try and get out and get membership, get some people in the tent. I'd rather have people in the tent educating them than excluding them and not giving them the information that they need. So bring them in, let's educate them, let's improve the quality, let's try and do it that way. The other thing is they're obviously not going to be wanting to join the association unless they actually try to improve their setup anyway. If they want more information, they want some guidance, they want something. So just the first step of joining the association, I think, is a positive. Those guys that are always going to be doing the wrong thing, they're not going to be wanting to join the association. It's just not going to be for them. They're not going to make the effort to try and join and participate. So I think we're sort of trying to get to that point where we're getting a critical mass of membership, allows us to start looking at introducing maybe down the track, maybe some more stricter compliance issues, or gradually introduce something as we go along. But certainly at this point in time, I just don't think we're big enough an organisation to be able to do that at this point.
But I think some of the first steps have already been taken. Now like the initiative now to dob in a dodgy scaffold. Now that people, member of the public, other members can actually anonymously send some photos into the association. The association will then take that, they'll manage that. Just touch on that, Rob. I guess this is a good first step.
So just encouraging members of the public, other scaffold companies, send the information in now to stop this. I lost his contract, so I'm going to dob this guy in saying his scaffold's a load of rubbish. Anything that gets put in needs to be justified. So, okay, here's a photograph of some very ordinary scaffolding. Tell us what's wrong with it first. Fill it all out. Who are you, etc., etc. Then we can then anonymously send that through to our local state workplace health and safety representatives, the regulators, to pursue it further on. So they may not necessarily get who's made the complaint, but we certainly would be vetting that before it actually goes any further. So you stop this vexatious dobbing in of other issues. But yeah, certainly we definitely encourage that. That's a way to a small way to bring the industry forward a little bit more. But I think the bigger thing is that education and those resources to actually help those scaffold companies that are starting off or maybe not quite sure what they should be doing, to give them that information to actually improve the quality of their scaffolding.
Nice. Clive, you were going to say something. I could tell you was on the tip.
Yeah, well, there's a really
about to say, were you about to
really
say send your photos to NASC new Twitter feed where we can... No, what were we going to say?
Then we get some classics. And Bob's point, we see weaponizing, and we call it weaponizing of our complaints process. And, the reality is, member on member complaining because they've lost business is something, but actually we still take it seriously. We have to. To Rob's point, we have a resource that we deploy in those circumstances. But the real win here, Simon, is actually the client. If you can get your audit and your guidances and your specifications within the audit recognised, as NASC has done, and I've openly said I stand on the shoulder of giants that got NASC the recognition through the Health and Safety Executive, SG4, TG20, now TG30, and all of the other 130 plus guidances that we issue. All of that forms the audit. Guess what? Clients demand NASC because of it. So you get to actually the ability to drive the standard and the quality by the commercial desire to reduce risk and improve efficiency and effectiveness because of the audit. So there's a real win-win.
I'm gonna look to the clock for a minute and think, we aim to try and keep the show around about an hour, and we could in danger of sitting here for 5 hours if we want to really get into this one. I want to just quickly touch on the third pillar, which is strengthening compliance, and it's kind of talking about this, isn't it? It's a natural segue from what you were just talking about there, auditing and making sure people are doing the right thing at the right time. And let's just touch on it, but we'll try and do it justice, but with Winston Churchill brevity at the heart of it. That's what we'll aim for. So, obviously, EASA members aren't contractors; they're trade bodies, right, guys? And is the challenge kind of getting the train? So at IARSA level, the challenge is getting their members, their trade bodies, to go and hold their members to account and do the right thing. So obviously you were kind of just painting a picture there, and we did touch on it a second around how that might look. But for you, Rob, you said you were having initial challenges with audit, and it was about bodies on the ground and resources and being able to do it. But does the roadmap include that coming back, or do you see some different outcomes for you guys to achieve a similar thing, or different outcomes, different methods? Sorry, to achieve the similar thing.
At this point, probably looking at other methods to achieve the same goal. We may end up slowly introducing more stricter membership requirements, possibly. How that looks and what that actually is, I couldn't say at this point in time. I think our main focus is, as an organisation, going from that state to that national basis is getting us onto things like the rewriting, getting on the Standards Australia committees for the various scaffolding codes, participating in each of the states' workplace health and safety codes of practice, things like that, to actually drive that from the other end, which then helps our members once they actually get out on site to do what they need to do. So I can't see an audit process in the near future, but it's not something that we would certainly discount. But again, it's that the logistics of actually trying to do that's probably prohibitive at this point in time. We've only really got one full-time staff. Everything else is volunteer. It's a little bit hard to try and get a big audit process going in something like that.
Yeah. And Clive, I imagine this is going to be a similar theme with some of the other countries around the world that come under the IARSA banner. And, it all comes down to cost. And like Rob said, with one employee and the rest being volunteers, how does IARSA see that compliance? And then who funds it? How does it get paid for? How do we actually roll this out and actually deliver this?
Simon, great question. I think it comes to two key things here. IARSA isn't here to try and dictate to any region, jurisdiction, trade body in membership how to do compliance. It's actually there to try and aid information and knowledge. And guess what? NASC was really, really wanting to understand its product testing, the NASC approved product testing. And we've lent into a couple of the members that are actually doing some amazing work in looking at steel strengths, testing and quality control. And so it's about shared knowledge and learning. And, here we are, NASC is 81 years old this year. We didn't click our fingers overnight and suddenly our audit came to life and everybody was complying with it. Reality is SAA may want to pick on NASC and what was your journey? How did you get to that space? How did you use volunteer compliance officers, auditors? How did you use your own team to start to fill the gap? When we can expand and share, and we'd be happy to share that information so that, if SAA wishes to go down that journey, we can. But there's also different flavors, strategically. What do we mean by compliance? You've picked on audit because we've kind of segued from it, but there's compliance through design. There's compliance through compliance sheets. There's compliance through training and education standards. So compliance has multiple different meanings in each of the jurisdictions. And what we've got to do is collaborate together to share that knowledge for the betterment of the whole of the sector. And that's the idea of IARSA.
I think that's a great point. There are absolutely multifacets of compliance, and one of them that you didn't mention is actually inspection, isn't it? And what that actually looks like. And I knew you were talking about inspection and some changes in Australia, weren't you, Simon? And you had a question for Rob about it. I think we were talking about that.
I think some of the early signs of the success is, motivating and pushing other regions to upskill. And Rob, there's been some media coverage lately around, the Scaffold Association pushing for a shorter inspection interval, currently from the 30 days down to 14 days. Is that a result of being a part of this organisation, or where's all that come from?
Yes, it has come from that, but also came from our campaign last year, where 3 months of last year where we ran a anti-tampering campaign. And a lot of the information we got out of that was that a certain amount of the issues that we get may be solved by more regular inspections. Being able to put up something and not have to look at it for 30 days blows the mind of some of our international colleagues. That being said, though, on our tier 1 sites, most scaffolds are being inspected every day or at worst weekly. So it's not unheard of here. So it's certainly not new. It would be in the lower end of the market, which is also the area I think that needs the most assistance and work along those sort of lines, and raising that responsibility and raising that reducing inspection intervals actually going to, I think, help keep a track on some of the scaffolding issues that we're actually getting, and relates back again to safety.
Nice. Well, guys, I think, look, I've got one final question for both of you, if I may. And if there's one thing that you would like listeners of this podcast to take away with them from today, if you've got a couple of sentences to share with them, one thing they want to take away, what would be it? Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first.
Come on, then,
Get
Rob.
involved. Get involved. You're in the industry, work in the industry, get involved in the industry. We're forever looking for people to put their hand up, contribute. Like, you've got a problem with something, come and see somebody about it, contribute, come up with solutions. It's going to improve the industry. It's going to improve your life, improve other people's lives. I think it's, get involved.
Nice. And for you, Clive?
Similar, but I think too often we pigeonhole through our own experiences what we are or who we are: contractor, scaffolder, client, designer, inspector. And because of that, we take a very polarized view. I think Rob's right. Get involved. Take off that baggage and come and look at the abilities that the ARSA brings in shared knowledge, in an open and engaging way. And I'm really excited about, actually, you look at the global world of scaffolding and access and what EASA can bring. There's things I'm learning about the Australian market. There's things I'm learning, and we all learn from each other. And if you go in with that polarized view and don't get involved, guess what? You're not widening your horizons. You're not looking at things in new ways and in new engaging, informing ways. And that's the big thing for me, Ben.
Nice. Well, it's good. It's nice to hear that kind of a consistent message, but also the same challenge, right? It's always the same one. Yeah. And I've worked with volunteer bodies as well, TDBF and things. And it's always the same thing. You want people to come and give their time, effort, and energy, because that's how you build momentum, isn't it? Yeah. And you actually get things done. So, great. Unscripted consistency from across the globe. How'd you like them apples, eh? So awesome. Love it. So we're going to move into the final section of the show, guys. And that was really cool and really informative. We'll maybe be more serious or less serious. We'll see. I don't know. But I'm going to hand over to Simon, and we'll see what Indy does in the background when we do this intro section. But mate, this part of the show's yours, so off you go.
I still don't know how I got logged with this job, but it's time for everybody's favourite part of the show. It's the penthouse to the doghouse.
Yeah, she's after it.
Well, we talked a lot about promoting all the good things happening in the industry, so it segues beautifully into starting with the penthouse. And Clive, you very kindly brought in today's pictures, and it's very close to your heart. For all the listeners driving in their car or out in their boat, fishing, or wherever they are listening to this, can you describe this project to us and give us a bit of a deep dive?
Yeah, so this is Manchester Town Hall, arguably Europe's largest scaffolding project at the time, and certainly for an NASC contractor, Brand Safway. Was a major project, and what struck me was the ingenuity that was needed for the project. Not only the hoists tying in, the material strength that was required, and the access. And if you look at the actual spire, it was a completely unconventional structure that leant in, not out from the actual structure, and it was, managed in certain parts. The erection process along the Ron tramway was done in an exceptionally short space of time, with some extremely significant demands on the workforce to deliver in a very tight time frame for a main arterial city entry route. So not only technically complicated, but equally executed in tight constraints.
Yeah, these are some pictures on that job, Clive, that I took when we were filming for the TWF. And I think this one is possibly my favourite because it kind of shows what's underneath the skin of this temporary roof in here. Yeah. And it's so cool. Simon, what were you going to say, mate?
I was just going to say, Rob, as a structural engineer that signs off on thousands of scaffold designs a year, I can see you salivating there, thinking the complexity that goes into
something like that. Yeah, love to get into something like that. But, I'd probably recommend that these systems had a tube and fit. There we go, trying it out there. Let's see what sort of bombs drop from that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the amazing thing was the hoist. If you look at the 40,000 kilonewton loading that was being managed in the hoists, and the fact that they actually tied into the main tower, taking out and lifting the tower section was amazing. So this wasn't just scaffolding, this was moving into structural engineering, Rob, which I was blown away. And, bearing in mind, this is one of my first scaffolds I saw. It gave me a real appreciation at a personal level, actually, that scaffolding is not just scaffolding. And all too often we overly simplify. And I'm sure, Rob, you're salivating.
Yeah.
I wish I saw more of what you do as engineers around these sort of structures.
Well, Rob, I've not got the same numbers of years in the industry as you, but equally as a chartered civil engineer and scaffold designer for many years, I could tell you walking around that job was as good as you think it was. Yeah. It was really cool. And the guys who designed it, it was Linden SGB brand Safway now, isn't it? But they did a really remarkable job. And some of the interfaces of different temporary works that often you don't see out in the public eye, but you are actually very common. A scenario here with heavy duty propping and bridging and temporary roof encapsulation, freestanding sections, tied sections, and this is on a monumental scale as well on this job. So
see,
really cool.
How can you say something like that, putting that together, is not done by a trade or a profession?
100%.
Yeah, it just doesn't get thrown up and thrown together. Someone's designed it, someone's built it, someone that knows what they're doing. Absolutely. Not anybody off the street can come and put this stuff together. It takes
these are the type of discussions we need to have.
It's got to be trained and you've got to learn.
Exactly. And these are the type of discussions we need to have as an industry and promote and show this, because kids coming out of school think about people putting scaffold around a 2-story house, covered in concrete, covered in dusts, walking through the mud, up and down the sides of hills. They don't think about this type of structure and the type of work that goes into this, and the different people that all come together. Like, these are the sort of things that will really, really improve the industry, the image of the industry.
I think just one thing it's worth saying, and I thank you, Clive, for bringing this one in, because I would have never picked this job. And it's remarkable, really, because it is probably one of the highlights. That it's not the scaffolding team did a blinding job on here, but also the hoist guys did, the principal contractor did, who was Lend-Lease, I believe. I remember talking to the temporary works coordinator and the project manager on that job, and obviously Manchester Council, the whole project team were a good example of really well executed temporary works. And it's as simple as that. And scaffolding playing a major role in something, to restore a historical landmark in Manchester. At the end of the day, it's brilliant, isn't it? What a great job! Thank you for sharing that one, Clive. That's great. Any final words on it before I?
No, I just wish this section was longer, Ben. This is one example. It's been quite interesting. ScaffX, we run the awards, and we have large project of the year awards, and I could have picked multiple that have come through, and there's just not enough time in the day to try and convince young people this is what scaffolding is about. And yes, front and back of houses are seen as mundane, but actually there's still technical complexity in and around that. And, I think we're about to probably look at the more of the dog
technical
image.
Complexity, I think, is the word we're going to pick out here, Clive.
Absolutely. But the complacency, Ben, complacency, you get it wrong and it's wrong. And, even small projects can be complete and utter messes, which I think we might move on to.
And we talked about in Australia, the Scaffold Association's now got the Dob in a Dodgy Scaffold scheme. Mm-hmm. And this next one could very well have been dobbed in if it had been in Australia. So let's segue across to that one and look at the not so glamorous side of the scaffolding industry?
Well, I think this is one. Clive said he wasn't a scaffolder. This is one Clive put up himself. That's what I think. I think what happened here. I think Clive put this up. This is opposite. He lives on the other side of the road. His mate says, "Can you just put a scaffold up for me, Clive? You know scaffolding, don't you?" He says, "Yeah, I can have a go. I can have a go." And this is what he did.
I wish I could say it was my handiwork, because actually it would probably be worse, if I'm really honest, if it was my handiwork.
I think you can see it in the bottom corner here, Clive. This would be where it would be lying. If
yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm not a scaffolder. Everybody, you know me. I'm not. This was was at the end of my road, and it was a facade. And actually, I know the house owner quite well, and he's an orthopedic surgeon. But you know, I was gobsmacked to the extent that, you know, I pulled up and tapped on the door and actually said to the orthopedic surgeon, "You're trying to create your own work." Because it's that bad. You know, there's no guardrail. Look, I don't even know where to start. Rob's
They're just being economical. They're being economical, saving steel. You know, not wasting steel on extra handrails and bracing and ties and all that sort of stuff.
Designers are always accused of putting too much gear in jobs, aren't they?
Yeah,
you know, it's still standing. You know, you know,
and it's shocking. But this inspires me. This image comes in presentations. I actually used this in Italy last week in actually saying, how is that acceptable? And even with the UK standards that we have and the belief that we have within the sector and the recognition we have, we still see this, and it's just unacceptable. And we've got to stay tireless in getting it corrected and recognising the risks that are involved.
It's all the same colour, though. That should count for something.
Yeah, that's true. The boards are relatively new, I think.
They're straight. Hold on a minute. We're taking your material, Clive. So are you going to be willing, as the provider of the photograph, are you willing to take the Doghouse challenge and give us the 30-second justification of this scaffold as if it was your scaffold and you put it up? And I guess what you'd have to imagine is if you were yourself coming over and talking to yourself and you'd put the scaffold up, how would you justify it in 30 seconds? Are you up for the challenge?
I'm up for the challenge, absolutely. What the hell? Let's go for it.
I reckon the members of NASC are desperate to hear this. If nothing else,
this is going to be beautiful. So don't worry, Mr. House Owner. I'll get you back of your facade. It'll cost you £2.50. It's a special rate. I'm doing it at a discounted. We would usually charge you £4 this week for this scaffold. It's that higher quality. We will guarantee to get you onto a podcast as well at some point in the near future for the quality of what we produce. And finally, you will get the admiring glances of one of the premier trade bodies at every occasion. Thank you very much for your custom.
Well done.
You forgot.
I think you're the only person that's ever actually done it within the time frame.
It was good, wasn't it?
Fair play, Clive. You missed out.
You've got to have some fun, chaps.
I think you need to. I think you need to put it on the NASC's social media saying latest high quality work from a member company in wherever, and just see what response you get, because there'll be so many people that do not fall for that.
The would, and that's my problem. My inbox would be full for months. I missed April the 1st, didn't I? Maybe I should stick in April the 1st.
There's definitely some mileage there. Just
the serious side of it, though. Every kid riding their bike up and down the street, going to school, going to football training, going to their friend's house, rides past this. They have a look at it, and although they don't know whether it's good or bad, this is the image of scaffolding that they see, and this is the problem
100%.
we've talked about throughout the whole episode. So I know we take the piss out of it and we have a bit of a joke about it, but there's a serious side of it as well.
Simon, you couldn't get it more accurate. We wonder why we have a fundamental problem in recruiting into scaffolding. The most regular work that most people see day to day here in the UK, I'm sure it's the same around the globe, is the stuff that's on the fronts and backs of houses. And if it's poor quality, what mother, father wants to see their children working in a sector when people know that that's not good quality? You know, they don't have to be experts.
Well,
but if you see people that are properly wearing PPE, they're working to consistent, absolutely, and that's what we've got to transform and go back to the image. That's going to take decades, unfortunately.
Well, I think, Clive, we're doing it a bit of an injustice, because if you did fall off those two boards there, you'd land on a strategically placed wheelie bin, which should soften the fall. You know what I mean? That's way softer than the concrete that's below it. So, and he might have his concrete recycling by the back of there as well. It's like an airbag. But, you know,
I think he's positioned nicely in Mercedes. I think the bonnet on a Mercedes is quite comfortable.
Or the bush, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe you're coming this way. Maybe that's the direction you fall in. You know, it's when you Reebok Classics on the wet board.
Well, it looks like the boards are cantilevered, so it's probably like a springboard, you know, diving board. You can probably run and jump.
Do you think they rule on there, bounce on the end, and jump onto the top one?
Yeah.
It's like gymnastics. Oh, man, we could go all day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Great. Good effort, Clive. That was really good. Well done, mate.
Always up for a challenge.
Well done. So, I mean, it's worth saying, if we often use a Facebook group, and I always give a shout out to them because they're cool, called the Scaffold Police, and they're great. But if you would like to send in your photos for us to feature on this part of the show, please send them in. It's great to receive them, and we'll always try and use them if they can. And the email address to send them into is podcast@braceyourself.online. That's podcast@braceyourself.online. So please send them in if you do. And same for the Penthouse photographs, right? If you have something you're really proud of and it's stunning and it's great, please send it in, because we want to talk about it and showcase your awesome work from any part of the world. We don't just want the front and backs of houses in Kent or Yorkshire, where I'm from, or any other place they put up terrible front and backs of houses, quite frankly. I'm sure there's one or two dotted around Queensland, Rob, Simon. So, look, I think what I'd like to do now is just finish by saying thank you so much to our guests. Clive, Rob, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on and sharing what you guys are up to at the moment. Obviously, we asked some challenging questions, or at least we tried to, and you guys did a great job of sharing your priorities in an honest and professional way, and I think you did. I think our listeners will be very grateful for that. So thank you very much. Thank you to Awesome for doing a great job of producing this for us. Thank you to our sponsors and everybody else. Thank you, Simon. Great job today. We did our best to give them the grilling that everyone wanted, but hopefully we did our peers justice, and we hope you enjoyed it. Remember, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a like, tell your friends about it, be the popular in crowd in the pub. And obviously this time you can say this is what the Scaffold Association Australia or NASC are up to, and you will have the inside scoop. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, brace yourself, gentlemen.